But I want to ask you this: one of the writers made the comment that you don't find this discussion amongst any of the Jewish writers of ancient times in their commentaries, and you don't find them talking about original sin when dealing with their own scriptures, and the absence of Adam and Eve in the rest of the Jewish scriptures, other than just making a grand entrance in scene one, has something to say. So when you look at, say, the Eastern Orthodox view, which, as you said, kind of stayed out of the fight between Catholics and Protestants, and then you consider the silence of most of the Jewish world, and just we're starting really with Augustine's take on Romans 5 and maybe 1 Corinthians 15. Is there an argument to be made there from the silence of the Jewish world and the fact that the Eastern Orthodox world just never even broke into the discussion until recently?
There is certainly an argument to be made. The question is whether the argument is compelling and convincing or not. But as I said earlier, I think a lot of our Western Protestant understanding of original sin and the fall comes mediated through Calvin, through Luther, through Aquinas a little bit, but also Augustine's reading of Paul's reading of Genesis. So the Jewish community that you're arguing for there, it is pretty tough to get original sin and the fall out of Genesis itself without Paul's interpretation of Genesis and his co-opting Adam and Eve to stand as the representatives for all of us in that sense. So in the Jewish worldview, you read the story in Genesis 3, and it's in 3 and 4, and it's the story of innocence being lost. The text itself says Adam and Eve didn't even know good and evil yet, right? They didn't know the difference between good and evil. So how are they supposed to be blamed for doing this awful thing that set all of the rest of creation down this one path? So the Eastern Orthodox position then has had more in line with that than it has the Augustine's reading of Paul. Now, you can make an argument on the other side to say within the Christian tradition, Paul is the definitive interpreter of Genesis. So we have to take his view of Genesis more seriously. Now, you could also argue, though, that what Paul is doing is modeling for us the responsible treatment of Scripture, where he took the Scriptures of his day and interpreted them in light of what was going on in his world. Paul wasn't the first one to talk about Adam and Eve. There are a bunch of stories about Adam and Eve outside of Scripture in the those couple of centuries around the time of Christ when Paul was writing, and he was clearly aware of it. So somebody like Scott McKnight and Dennis Venema wrote their book Adam and the Genome. That's Scott McKnight's claim. He says, yeah, Paul was using this, but so was everybody else using Adam to tell a story. So it's not just that Paul's story has to be taken as the definitive one, as much as it is what Paul was doing should be the model for us to say, how can we tell the gospel story in our own context? And for him, it was telling it in the context of Adam and Eve. For us, it might be telling it in the context of evolution. So there can be arguments back and forth there. And like I said earlier, it's always going to be a little more complicated than just saying, here's the one point that seals the deal and gets everybody to believe the same way.